Call to order, City of Oak Hill workshop meeting. We'll now start. We will first stand for invocation, pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Taylor, Vice Mayor Catagano,
Here.
Commissioner Hyatt, here. Commissioner Drollinger,
Here.
Commissioner Warning.
Here.
Apologize for the comms. We're trying to get them all adjusted so everybody can hear us. And what better way to do it than have the IT guy here adjusting it while we're having our meeting. So I appreciate y'all's patience with that. All right. Presentation on current Garden Street Oak Hill subdivision plan and potential modifications.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, is our attorney coming? No. Okay. Go ahead then.
Just so everybody can see what is currently approved for the neighborhood, this here is Garden Street. Dean Street, and this is the little access for emergency access. And then this is US 1 here. You don't see the whole. The lots around the perimeter that you see that have diagonals, those are all the proposed 50-foot lots. In here where you see the double crosshatch internally, those are what they're proposing as 40-foot lots. And then, can you just shrink it down just so that's all. And then,
Control minus.
And then this area internally is what they're proposing as the common open space. It doesn't show it on here, but it's heavily treed. And then they have ponds located at the corners here. And then it's just a looped street pattern, just so everybody's aware of what's currently approved. On the Game Street side, it's really hard to see, but there's a 10-foot, this real thin line here is a 10-foot easement. That's their proposed landscaping easement. And then this internal line shows the back of the lots. So the external line and this internal line in between those is the 10-foot easement.
I may be out of order, but I just have a question. Is this the Adams development? Adams home?
Well, I don't know who's going to develop it, but it's what we are referring to now as the Oak Hill subdivision. It was Garden Street at one point.
So it is Adams Homes that's developing?
We don't know that.
Okay. Who owns the property?
Garden Street Development LLC, I think it's called.
Who owns that?
That's an LLC. That is who owns it.
Some bids would have that.
Is there any representatives here from the project?
No, the city attorney reached out to both the attorney that was here from Cobb Cole the night the final development plans were approved, and the attorney, the litigator who's up in the Panhandle somewhere. And then I, in turn, reached out to the Cobb Cole attorney to ask her if there was somebody I could meet with ahead of this workshop to talk to about coming up with some proposals. And we haven't heard anything from either attorney. Subsequent to that, they've basically said that if the city can come up with some alternatives to this design, they are willing to look at them. I just don't think they were willing to be part of that process.
Okay.
At your last several meetings, there's been a lot of discussion about the primary changes, and, you know, we're here tonight to hear from the residents, but looking at some alternatives that might work along this part of the subdivision. Whether that is something that would be, instead of this internal open space, you could put some of this open space along here to create a large buffer between the road and the subdivision. So, you know, you would see woods as you drove down Gaines. If that would be acceptable, that would be one alternative. There's also been talk about combining these lots, you know, to make even larger lots, so that when you're driving down Gaines, you would not see, I think there's, I don't know, 16 or 18 right now. Combining those so you wouldn't see so many rooftops. There had been discussion about a wall here with some additional landscaping, but I'll be honest with you, with the grade and everything, you would still see all those rooftops, even with the wall. So I don't know if that would be something you'd even want to consider.
When you said combining the lots, and that was also turning the lots around too, right?
I think you mentioned that as one plan.
Right, that's what most of the people here were agreed to at one time or another.
I don't know if the developer will agree to that, but we should bring them back, you know, options.
It looks like there's 16 of them now, and if they went with a width that was similar to the ones that are on Game Street, they're all 126. Combining two together would cut it down to 8, but they would be 100-foot wide lots. You might be able to put a bigger house and recoup the money that way by having a more premium piece of real estate sitting there. I don't know all the numbers on that, but I know that most of the people that were in the group that I was representing back before I was a commissioner, they would be happy with that, would be willing to accept that, as far as I know.
So you're saying 8 100-foot lots along Gaines Street?
Yeah,
With the properties facing Gain Street.
yeah,
With
and
the
the
homes
setbacks
facing.
would have to be similar too. But I think with it gaining all of the buffer and all of that on there, it would probably work out to be okay if they didn't make a massive backyard. I don't know, I couldn't really tell, like, so if you had a lot, these are 100-foot long, Janet, is that right?
I want to say they're 120. Doesn't even note it on here, but I want to say it's 120.
It says a
Can't.
20-foot access track, utility easement.
Yeah, that's
That's the
the
emergency
emergency
entrance.
entrance, because they didn't want a full entrance onto Gaines. So the Volusia County Fire Department requires a secondary access, but they were happy with the one that they could access in the event they needed to. So that's that 20-foot down here. So I guess tonight we're looking at hearing from the residents, those along Gain Street and others who, what is your objection to this subdivision? And is there anything that would allow the development to go forward that you would find acceptable?
Do we have any residents that would like to speak?
Yeah. Could you come up to the microphone?
Yeah, my name's Joe Kershaw. I just moved into Lagoon Mist Estates last August. And I know that's a new development, and why would I be up here speaking against developments? But I don't understand why we'd want something with so many houses on such a small area. It doesn't fit in Oak Hill. I mean, Lagoon Mist Estates barely does. I mean, our lots are kind of big.
They're big, yeah.
Yeah.
They're, at least they're close to what the normal houses are. So I mean, I guess it's taxes? What is it what's the benefit to everybody else that packing so many houses in such a small area? And I was here at the meeting last year where I think what I learned was that they're taking the total area to get how many houses they can fit. And even if they take that, the pond and the woods and stuff, that still goes into the total. So if it was 4 houses per acre, and it's 100 acres, that's 400 houses. If 50 acres was a pond, they still could put 400 houses on the other 50 acres, right? Is that,
Well, they have to meet what's called open space requirements, and that's, that can be both undeveloped as well as counting
yeah, I mean,
parts of the lot that aren't developed.
for my part, I'd rather have something that fits in with the rest of Oak Hill. That's why I moved down here, because I like it quiet and people are acre lots. I think ours are, I wish mine was an acre. I think it's half. Yeah, I wish it was an acre, but, it is what it is. And then the other question is, are they going up at all? Is the water going to pour off that into Lagoon Mist? Because I've been there for the past 2 hurricanes. I came before they built it, and it was great. I don't want to build that and say, oh, we're going to build this, and we're going to build it up 10 feet, and then all that water is going to pour into Lagoon Mist Estates. That's my question. And then, and to follow up with that, the realtor who said Adams Homes was building this also said when they built this that they were going to bring water and sewer to us. So I don't know if you guys know anything about that.
Well, this project will be served with water and wastewater from the lines along US 1. Eventually, a development further down south will bring the lines further south on US 1 and make access to them a little bit better, but nothing runs right by your house or your subdivision.
The realtor said a lot of stuff. That was one of the things she said. Oh, when they build that next development over there, that's when they're going to give you water.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I do have one here, Henry Nolan.
That's me.
Okay.
2 things, and I'll watch the clock if I have to. I'm also in Lagoon Mist, a little further down than he is on the second house in. The worry that a few of us have is the encroachment of so many people in such a dense populated area. It looks like HUD housing. And yes, we were told by Adams Homes they are building that. We are learning that they did a pretty decent job with our houses because of after the storms. We had very little damage in the area. But the worry is the overflow. And is it going to be senior-based? Is it going to be open housing? We haven't had answers to that. And
It
do
is
you have
not-
answers to it?
It has not gone through as an age-restricted community.
Okay. Is it a HUD housing project because it's so close, so densely populated? That's what it makes it look like, which ends up as whatever may be possibly into a ghetto situation, which we don't want. So is anything being said? All you're doing is shaking your heads, guys.
No.
Answers.
We're listening to
It,
you.
Okay.
it has not gone through the process for HUD housing, but at 40 and 50-foot lots, it's like most all the new subdivisions you see around Volusia County.
They're all zero lot line.
They're targeting, you know, a demographic that is probably a first-time home buyer or somebody with, you know, looking to downsize or that sort of thing, so.
And as my predecessor says, are you guys approving it because you can get more taxes out of them?
The former administration is who actually had done the approval on this, so we don't really know what their reasoning was, per
Okay.
se.
Do you have second approval, or is it done deal, is it a done deal?
Well, part of the reason we're here tonight is,
To get our input.
to get your input, but also, this subdivision will be appearing on the January 13th agenda for discussion on reopening the approval that was given to them, the final approval. In other words, this new commission
Is reconsidering
wanted to
what was
take
before.
a look at how that approval went, and is there anything that the city could do to open it back up for discussion? And it's, you know, it's also been the subject of litigation, so there's that as well. What we're trying to do is see if there's anything we can do to satisfy the citizens of Oak Hill, the neighborhood in particular, and the developer, to see if we can come to a compromise where this can go forward in a way that everybody's happy. And I know that's a little pie in the sky,
Well,
but
yeah.
that's what we're trying to do. And the first thing is to hear from the residents, so we know when we're speaking with the developer what will and won't be acceptable.
Well, my final question was going to be, I know it's been costing the city money with litigation and actuation and looking into it further. Is the city benefiting from this development at all?
No.
Okay. And my second question, I'll bring up probably at the city commission meeting, because a little further down where we are, the Mary Deweese Park, we've been hearing is a problem with the boundary of the park and our property lines. That may need to be looked at again, so we'll have to discuss that at a different point.
I understand that the board that approved this has also been voted out, so what you're looking at up here did not approve.
Well, that's why we're here.
Yes, sir, and we appreciate you being here, and we want your input, please.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No climb down on the clock.
Any other names?
No.
Okay.
I'm Tanner Andrews. I've been working on this for a little while now. This project has been something of an Hungarian group entertainment. I mean, from the beginning with the incomplete application, no topo, no trees, through what was earlier termed a final approval, where what was on the board is what you're seeing now, roughly, one pond, but what was in the book was two ponds. You know, the question, what did we actually, or what did they actually vote on, is unclear. And when, if ever, was the information available, because the two ponds are all that were ever available for the citizens to review. Think you really have problems from the beginning to the end on this, and it might be appropriate to start, do it right when you redo it. Now, as to the neighbors, you might get a lot less pushback if you did come up with a 10-foot wall along Gaines Street to block the
10-foot walls are not allowed in our code.
yeah, may have to work something out, but one way or the other,
And that's what we're trying to do tonight.
Right,
We're trying to
sure.
find out from the neighbors and the residents in general in Oak Hill, what would be acceptable. So if we do have to open this back up, we'll know in working with the developer what we're working towards this time. and we're trying to get as much input as possible as to the size of the lots, what would be acceptable along Gaines Street, all sorts of things. So we have the information we need to work with the developer.
And of course, there's one other question when you do that. Is what we have here consistent with what we've provided to the Water Management District? Because it sounds like drainage could be an issue.
Sure.
Janet, what is the highest wall that we would be allowed?
I think in residential areas, it's 6 foot. Sometimes in industrial areas, it gets higher than that because of security purposes, depending on what's there to be secured and you know, that sort of thing. But I think in residential, it's 6.
Hi, Tammy Creek, 124 North Gaines Street. My question is, the numbers that the developer based their stormwater planning on, they kept talking about the 100-year graph in the Mead Hunt report, but then they said they went over those. So I was wondering, what are those numbers they based this overflow? They kept saying we're going above and beyond for stormwater drainage. It wasn't going to leave the development, et cetera, et cetera. I was wondering, I never heard what they were basing this overdoing for stormwater on. That's what I'd like to know.
I'm not an engineer, but I can explain where we are with regard to stormwater, what the developer submitted and what went through St. John's and through Mead and Hunt, who's our engineers who reviewed this, was a system of ponds on the periphery that would handle what St. John's requires the developers to do with regard to drainage, holding it on their property. The way I understand it, the area in the middle, which did have 2 big ponds instead of the one.
Right, I remember the 2. Yeah.
This is where the city has some concern with what was submitted and what they ended up approving, because when they had the 2 ponds, I think they changed it to 1 pond so they could meet the open space requirements, because ponds can't be counted as open space. So they went down to 1 pond, and they have instead these sump pump things that they call, and what happens, these are connected to these ponds and the drainage system that runs all along the subdivision. And in the event those outer ponds can't handle an event, the water will come here. It will go into this pond, but if there's a bad event, it will also come up from these pipes, which will flood this common area, which is heavily treed, and some of those trees are not trees that do well with water. So their answer to that is that it's sandy soil and it'll seep through. I went back and looked at what St. John's thought about this design and found that this is not the design that was submitted to St. John's. St. John's didn't have these sump pipes in here. They had the 2 big ponds, and those ponds would have handled and would not have impacted the forested trees. So right now, when we open the discussion with the developer at the next meeting, that will be on the table. You know, what happened? Why is this development that was approved different than what was presented to St. John's? And I questioned the reviewer at St. John's, asking him if those perimeter ponds are all that is needed for their requirements. Is it okay for them to change the internal part of this? And his answer to me was no, that would be a permit modification. So that's something we'll be talking to the developer about at the meeting where this is opened back up to go back to the final plan approval. And see what the developer says about that.
Okay, thanks.
Just a further question, you said those
If you-
external ponds go into into the interior? So-
They're connected. The whole system is,
Lagoon Mist.
no, into the interior of this subdivision.
Because that's right
Lagoon
behind,
Mist is down here.
yeah, that's right behind $500,000 homes that can be flooded out if it
Right.
floods our way.
Right. Yeah, they're proposing to put the water, if these ponds can't handle a rain event, then they're proposing that it would come in here to the middle of this subdivision, and either this pond would get the overflow, or these pipes would flood this entire area.
Where do they flow into from there?
Nowhere.
Flow to homes or?
Well, it's the same as your subdivision, yours,
Yeah, ours drains to the south,
right.
and so theirs would drain to the south, which is our overflow tank, and then across the street.
I don't know that that's the case, but
That's what we need to find out.
if you could come, anybody can come up and approach the podium. This is a workshop, so just give your name and address for the record.
Charlie Dean, 157 East Halifax. My concern, a little bit of what the gentleman was asking here, the pond that they have in Lagoon Mist, it actually has a spillway. The spillway goes over and it goes into a drainage canal that comes down and crosses under Lagoon, and then comes right back up through the Dewey's pasture, crosses under North Gaines, runs in culverts, or supposed to, runs in culverts on the east side of Gaines Street, crosses Halifax into South Gaines, and then runs at a diagonal line to the drainage that goes out to Bill's Hill. Okay, that's actually the way that one runs. So my concern would be, we're putting all these rooftops, all the asphalt, all that on there. We've got all the flooding that's going on in Volusia County. And where the flooding is coming is where all the new developments come. Because all the new developments, they've raised, you gotta have so many inches above the grade, the road grade, to build it. Well, you come back then to the people that had homes there for a period of time, all the water runs off of their, the new developments and runs into the older homes. They have their flooding. It's not, conducive when you have that many roofs, that much asphalt, to think that the water is going to permeate the soil. Florida's pretty good about soaking up weird sand. But the problem has been, and I can tell you that's what most of the lay people think, and I'll agree with them, okay, as an engineer, when you cover the soil up, the water has no place to go. Okay, it's going to run to the lowest point. Okay, you can put all them ponds you want to in there, and even with the pond in here, I can guarantee you that if they fill up, it's not going to keep the water in there. It's going to go to the surrounding areas. Okay, and if you back up and you go down Gaines Street, and I'm just going to use Gaines Street, them homes was not built up 24 inches above the road. Them homes were built up maybe 12, 14 inches, if that, but they're not much above the road grade. So, and on there you got the same thing in Lagoon Mist. They're a little higher, but they're not as high as these new homes are going to be. So that's the thing you got to think about, is you're crowding, and I know we're on recording and everything else, but I don't mind saying it. You're trying to crowd 10 pounds of shit in a 5 pound bag and it don't work. Okay? The commission has done this. They've done this on Ridge Road with the school up there when they piled 1,000 students, or over 1,000 students are in that school now. Okay? We don't have 1,000 kids in Oak Hill. We only have 2,000 and something residents. So you start crowding all this stuff into a community that's as small as Oak Hill. We have no infrastructure for that. We have none of the stuff for it. The residents that's been here, that's been paying their taxes, are the ones that's gonna suffer. Because let me tell you what, I don't care if the developer don't make a dime off of that property. It don't bother me as a resident. And it shouldn't bother y'all as the commissioners. Whether that developer makes any money or not, shouldn't be y'all's concern. Okay? Keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
No, I guess I come back up? Sure. Joe Curcio, 228. So, question, the south end, what's gonna be the separation there between Lagoon Mist and that, do you know? Because
Well,
again, the
you're-
realtor told us it was gonna be 25 feet and they were gonna leave trees, but
No, it doesn't look like 20. You're right here, and it looks like this buffer maybe 10 foot, maybe even less. So you're gonna have these lots backing right up onto your lots. You can see the lots here.
yeah, I was wondering how, what this distance was for the US when we get up. We got 3 houses there, and I got elected to the HOA there, so I'm here, and they're gonna, the 3 houses that are adjacent to that are gonna be asking me, what's gonna be behind them? Is it gonna be the pond? Is it the houses? I'm trying to figure out the distances, yeah. You know?
Yeah, I'd have to see if we can put this on an aerial to see how that would
Yeah, if I could,
work.
if I could see that. And then, back to what I was saying before.
Your address again?
228. So I'm across the street, but the people that are over there are gonna be asking me, because I
Okay.
said I would be here.
Okay.
Back to what I was saying before about the lot sizes, I think if you were flying in a helicopter or a plane over Oak Hill, you should be able to look down and not know that that's a new development, know that there's new roofs. It should fit in. The lot sizes, the layout, yeah, great, it's got a nice pond and stuff, but you shouldn't be able to do, oh, look at that. You know, there's 400 houses packed in this one little area. Thanks, I'm sorry to come up twice.
No, that's what we need.
That's what we want.
Oddly enough, our comp plan says that too, Joe.
Any other citizens would like to speak? Anyone else? Yes, please.
Thank you. So Kristen Mellinger, I live on River Road, but also have property at 321 North Gaines. So thank you all for being here. Welcome. So when water absorbing lowlands are paved, there's nowhere for the water to go. And this development doesn't fit in to the surrounding neighborhood. And I'm not looking for a wall. That's just a problem ignored as a problem solved. The distance between the houses is ridiculously narrow, narrower than anywhere else in Oak Hill, and for a reason. There's a reason the rest of the homes in Oak Hill didn't do that. Because when you pave lowlands, there's nowhere for water to go. I extrapolated out, one of the things that Janet sent to us was the design for the trees. And I extrapolated out the 7 acres that's shown there. And based on their tree survey, there's about 63 trees per acre. They're planning on saving 443 trees. That means they're going to cut down 1,645 trees, or 78% of the trees. For those of you who weren't on the commission, or who are new to the commission, I did a drone survey of the property before they started cutting down trees already. And there's several great blue heron rookeries there. And I sent a note when I sent this to the commission last December. The commission said, well, send it to the developer, because the developer was at that meeting, and I did. And the developer replied to me and said, great blue herons are not a protected species and won't be treated differently than any other bird. So their plan all along has been to not worry about that. You asked about the solution that would satisfy me. As a resident of Oak Hill, I think the answer is development is fine. I support having areas for first-time home buyers. I bought my first home here 18 years ago, and I love Oak Hill. I would welcome other people to Oak Hill as well, but there needs to be less pavement and more areas for the water to go into the ground. Sandy soil is only fine if it's not covered in pavement or house. And so my request is to have a greater setback, something more in line. I understand that it probably won't be an acre for every lot. I understand that it might not even be a half acre for every lot, but 6 lots per acre is a lot. So that's what I believe would be better fitting in Oak Hill and would be better for all of the residents who are concerned about water runoff. So thank you.
Thank you. Sometimes you get new thoughts in your mind, especially when you have Parkinson's. Why did you people move to Oak Hill?
Same reason you did.
Why was that? To be closer to my kids.
Oh,
Okay, my kids are living in Brevard County. I was out in north end of Volusia County. We wanted to come down here for a couple of reasons. You know, we tell people, you say, where do you live? I live in Oak Hill. Where's that? Go down US 1 to the stoplight. To the blinking light, we got a blinking light, okay? I used to live in the town of Swainsboro, Georgia. We had a blinking light. And then to Leon Springs, I lived up there. We had 2 blinking lights. Why? Because we like quiet living. This is not quiet living. You're putting 400 families in where you should have less than 100 families, less than 50 families. And I don't think that the neighbors, not just us who are directly there, but anybody else live on Gaines in that area? Why aren't you up here telling me what you think? Okay? You need our opinions. You're looking for it.
Yes, sir.
That's what it is.
Yes, sir, thank
You
you.
know, we need to be consulted on a regular basis, and this is an open forum to tell us and to let you know how we feel. We like to keep the Oak Hill feeling. You know, we don't want to live in downtown Daytona Beach.
And I think if I could just clarify, for anybody who doesn't know, that 3 of the people sitting up here as elected officials were not here when this project was approved, nor any of the new projects approved. And there is now a moratorium on these projects until we can change our regulations and garner input from the residents to know from here on out where we go. But we are stuck with some of these that got approved by the former commission. This one in particular, we think, our city attorney thinks, we have a right to reopen back to the final engineering approval based on some things that weren't necessarily done properly. Whether that works, whether we get sued, whatever. In talking with the developer about that next step, that's when this came up, that, you know, is there anything we can do in going back to the drawing board so we don't have to keep drawing and guess at what is wanted. So tonight was just a way for us to hear from you so that we have a clear direction on where we need to go. It's not necessarily, you know, I don't know if anybody knows or didn't know, but not necessarily the people sitting up here tonight had anything to do with approving this.
Just for numeric
Can you
accuracy,
come to the podium, please?
I think it's 130 some postage stamp sized lots there, not 400 and not 50.
136, I think.
136, okay. I was saying 130 some postage stamp sized lots.
John Colstead, 285 North Gain Street. To reply to the gentleman that was up there asking why people didn't talk, when this first started, we talked, and we spoke, and the board ignored us. Totally ignored us. And we all got together and started a lawsuit against the city. And the city just kept going and going and going. And loopholes were made, it was proven in law, and we got shafted with this. All of us that live in Oak Hill got shafted because of this. The builder, the first builder's lawyer, was so adamant and everything else, we almost had fistfights in this room over him. He didn't give a shit about nobody that lived in Oak Hill.
Please watch your language.
I'm sorry. He didn't. He didn't care about anybody. He cared about his bottom line. Now, if all those ponds flood into that open area, isn't he flooding his own development? I mean, every time we come here and talk about this monstrosity, there's a different picture up on the board. And we can't even get what's really going to happen. Now we hear that the water management did not approve this. Then why are we looking at it? Why?
We're looking at it because that may give us a reason to go back and reopen the approval process. And when we do that, not only will the Water Management District have another stab at it, the city would have another stab at it. And we just want to get opinions on what is unacceptable, what would be acceptable. What we're doing here tonight is that.
I totally understand that. And I've watched this show from its inception to right now. And I've watched how everything was changed and everything wasn't changed and this, that. And I've watched people that will remain nameless argue to the fact that there wasn't open space. They weren't using the property correctly. Now, this doesn't look to me like they're using it correctly if it's going to all flood. And the only ones that are protected are them, because they're going to be built up high enough that they're going to have one whole big pond in the middle. I'm sorry, but you guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dana Graytrex, 219 North Gaines. I served 3 years on the Economic Development Board here, and we, time after time, presented areas for low-income housing, for business areas, business zones, and for 3 years, not one thing that we introduced and presented was accepted. And so finally we all quit, and that's why you don't have an Economic Development Board now, because nobody was listening to the hours and hours we spent doing research. And so a lot of times we just gave up. And I just want to thank you for giving us an opportunity once again, a year later, to come back and to hear what we care about. I have seen on the news in several small areas outside of Orlando where commissions listened and listened to the people, and they overturned the developers, and they have been championed for listening to the small rural areas. And I loved what he said about you come here because you want this kind of culture, you want this kind of atmosphere, and for us to not allow it to be protected is shame on us, because I don't think that's what our forefathers who worked so hard to develop it to begin with in this particular manner would really approve of us not listening to our comp plan, where 4 houses per acre originally. And if we don't listen to what we set up as a comp plan, then why do we even spend all the money and the time to have a comp plan? So giving these exceptions really is not listening to the people. I just want to say thank you for listening to us, and thank you for all the research that you've done, because honestly, we just get tired of not having a voice where it's acted upon in a manner that serves the whole community. And I just appreciate and so we give up. That's really what happens. We stop coming and we give up and we just say, well, you're going to do what you're going to do anyway. Those of you who have continued to fight, to ask the questions, to look beyond, you've spent hours and hours of research, and you have regenerated in many of us this hope that the people will be served.
Thank you, Dana. Yes, Jeff.
Jeff Bracy, 196 Westbrook Circle. I've been here 46 years. This is why you guys are the new people up here. This is why the last council didn't listen to the people in this town. I'll say it like it is. I told you 12 years ago, you don't listen, you got removed. And let me tell you something. There's unique about this place. I've been here 46 years, folks, where you could go on this river and go fishing and come in. And people used to say, well, where do you live? I live in Oak Hill. Well, we wouldn't live down there. Why? Well, this and this and this. Well, hell, don't come down here. Okay? All right? But it's been the best kept secret around. Look at DeLand. It's atrocity. Look at Orange City. Look at DeBerry. Look at Edgewater. This line of woods that we're talking about, 10 feet off in Gain Street, we're gonna come down Gain Street, and we're gonna look at 100. What are the lots? 110 by 125?
No.
Right now, they're
No. The lots, the houses are on now.
Oh.
Okay. Then you're gonna come down, and all of a sudden you see a nice brick home. Then you're gonna see a back end of a pool or a pool cage with a 10-foot buffer of woods. They don't cut it, folks. And then people, you live in that new subdivision behind Mary Louise Park, well, get your rowboat out and your oars, because when that floods, you're gonna flood. I know these ditches as well as Charlie Dean back here. And let me tell you something, you're in for a rude awakening. And the pipe on Gain Street, folks, I know a little something about this city, I've been here. That pipe underneath Gain Street was rigged. You want to dig it up? I'll show you. On the south end of Halifax, and there, you were here back then, you know it was rigged. The pipe was Band-Aid. So if you think your water for a minute is going to come and suck through the Baptist church behind it and come across Gain Street, it's not going to happen, folks, because there's a Band-Aid sitting there. Let's open up the whole can of worms about this town, okay? Where's this water going to go, folks? You're gone. Everybody up there is going to be gone. And then the next thing they're going to say, well, we didn't have no say. I grant you didn't have a say in the last 3 or 4 years. Wouldn't listen to the people who live here for 40-some years. This is not what the citizens of Oak Hill want. Lighthouse Cove in the last 3 years, 4 years said, we don't want the place to change. We love it just the way it is. We like our little dollar store. We like our flea market. Well, you can't tell the developers what to do. Well, folks, somebody put their big boy pants on and say, enough is enough. And we need to reopen this thing. And we need to reopen the golf course, Bills Hill Road, before we get a lawsuit you won't rub off with Ajax. Now, if you think of 10, and what happens to the trees when they die between Gain Street? Oh, that's lovely Gain Street. We got a pool back there. We got a bunch of kids swimming in it, but we got a woods there. It's all falling down. What are you going to replant the trees? Who's going to replant the trees? Once the developer takes the cream off the top, he's gone. You guys are going to end up with a belly full of arrows. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. Folks, think about what we're doing tonight.
Thank you, Jeff.
I think I can speak for everyone. We're here because we care. And if we didn't, they'd be cutting ground tomorrow for what you see up in that screen. So we're here to get your input.
If you don't care, you'd be voted out.
But we're here.
That's what just happened.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one quick question? I hadn't heard is there two more developments at 350 and 850?
Can you come up to the podium if you have questions?
Jana Taylor, 183 East Ariel Road. I just want to go back, I think about a year and a half or so ago, comments were requested from the commission to be sent in via email about this particular subdivision. And I did submit an email, and I know several other people submitted emails in lengthy detail in regards to this project. So I don't know if there's a way to get those emails. They were sent to the commission. I believe I can find my email. I don't have it with me right now, but and resend it to get a timeline of when they wanted those comments due back. I just wanted to bring that up because there was a time where we did have a certain amount of time to respond, to send comments in, so that you could possibly find those comments and go back through them and look to see what was said at that time. And then another thing is, I remember in one of the meetings that I was at a commission meeting, it was questioned, what flood zone was this particular property in? And it was brought up by, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he did say it was in an AE flood zone, which would require a homeowner that would have a mortgage on the property to have flood insurance. So that was my comment.
All right, thank you.
Joe Curcio, T2 Lagoon Mist. Yeah, I don't know who I heard this from, but are there other developments in the works? Like, I heard the two numbers I heard, the south here, there's one that's got 350 homes and another one's got 850. Is that
The Bill's
true?
Home
Yeah.
has roughly 900.
900 homes in that one.
How far on are they?
There are other developments that are in various stages of the approval process, and this is not the only one that will be reopened for discussion at the January 13th meeting. However, this one has what our city attorney thinks is the strongest argument for us being able to take another look at it. And because it's been the subject of litigation and the neighbors really have tried, that's why we were having this meeting tonight.
One thing I'd like to mention, please come on.
Go ahead.
Part of our problem is we have to follow the comp plan. Our current comp plan has not been updated in many, many years and is a priority that we have talked that we want to update. And part of the problem is the fact that the current existing comp plan allows for these kinds of developments. So hopefully we can get some citizens to participate when we get ready to redo the comp plan and finally get something that fits the people in our community and what the people in our town want.
And it does allow for these types of developments, but I think the confusion is that some people are saying it requires the city to give them a certain density, and that's not true. It does allow for it, but it doesn't require the city.
So Kristen Mellinger again.
I just had a question on their stormwater, the retention ponds and the sump pump system. Does that require electricity?
The whole place will have, no, I don't think the sump pumps will require electricity. I think it's just a matter of how it's all tied into the system and the pipes and how it drains once the ponds are full. It goes through a pipe system to get to that center area. When I, previous to joining city employment, when I looked at this, it concerned me for a couple reasons. One being that we were trying to preserve the 7 acres of wooded area, and all of a sudden seeing that those trees could be flooded out, I didn't know, how that would impact that. And as well, looking back at the early comments from Mead and Hunt, the city's engineer, they were concerned with the way the ponds on the periphery were designed. And there are comments in the back and forth between the city's engineer and the developer's engineers, with the city's engineer basically saying that those ponds will be a maintenance nightmare because the way the pipes were towards the bottom of the ponds, they would be constantly filling with silt that would have to be maintained a lot more than the average retention pond. And the developer's response to that was, well, there'll be an HOA in place. That's, their concern to make sure they hire the people to do that. So, when we open this back up, those types of things will be raised again. I'm not sure why the city kind of backed down on requiring something different, but a lot of times it's like, if it's acceptable to St. John's as the state agency, the cities kind of say, well, that's acceptable to us. And I think through us looking at our process, we have to look at what may be acceptable to somebody else, but not to the city, because you're putting that on knowingly on these future residents. And when those pipes clog up, if the HOA isn't on top of it, then the neighboring lands will be open to more flooding. So it just seems like it was one thing after another when you started looking at this thing more closely.
And so the city does have the ability to approve or not approve that sort of stormwater system?
It's my opinion that we could have said that, no, we don't want that to be, there's mechanisms that they could use to meet the requirements. And it looks like they took the low tier to, and again, I think it all goes back to open space, because they had to create these ponds that wouldn't take up too much of the overall development, because those can't be counted. In my mind, that's why they chose that design, and the fact that it could be seen as something that probably would cause maintenance problems down the line. To me, why would you accept something like that right off the bat?
Thank you. I'm glad you're all here too, so thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, Tammy Creek, 124 North Gaines. I had a question about the trees. That's new information for me. What kind of trees don't like to be flooded out? What are those trees?
Well, I think there's a lot of oaks in there.
Oh.
It's not this is a high and dry, area. I don't think there's a lot of wetland in there.
Right.
And if you're using that as overflow for your stormwater system,
right,
you're putting potentially waters to sit in there for for several days on a big storm, where trees, a lot of trees do not like a lot of water.
Right, so I'm the bottleneck that comes down behind the Baptist church. And during, it doesn't need to be a big storm to have the water not drain quickly. And what happens to the 50-foot loquat trees when I had 2 weeks of standing water after Ian, they popped out. They actually, I couldn't believe they were pushed up out of the ground and fell over, which was shocking to me. So I just was curious, feeling bad for anybody that lives there. Or these trees, what do? They flood, then they die, and then they fall. Like I'm just wondering.
You know, I can't speak
Okay.
to exactly. I just know there are species, just with it, like with anything,
Right.
that tree species that love water
Right.
and require water, and there are others that are more upland, hardwoods, and
Right.
that sort of thing. So, putting potentially
Yeah.
a lot of water
Yeah.
in there, to me, doesn't make sense.
No.
Their response to me was, it's all sand, it'll evaporate real quickly, but we all
No.
know that.
It doesn't work that way.
Now,
Okay.
Tammy, your house was flooded
Yeah.
due to that, correct? You're part of that bottleneck where the drainage runs through, and you received some flooding as well, didn't you?
I have multiple things going on, but during Ian, before the city did try to excavate the pipe, and they did try to, or the county actually, they did try to do something to get the flow to go, but it's a trickle. It's like those sand hourglasses. I'm where it gets blocked. And so I had 6 feet of water. And that was, I think, they said, was it Ian, 12 to 16 inches of water? Milton was, I have a rain gauge now. I think Milton was 12 or 10. It just depends where you're at. But it doesn't drain fast. And I had 2 weeks of, all my trees died except for my strawberry guavas. And they did pop out of they popped out of the ground, 50-foot trees, and they just fell over. So when you said that, I was like, oh, okay, you guys need to talk about that with them.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Hi there, it's Neiman. You mentioned 3 letters, which I was about to talk about, HOA. Now, I know that you have corporations that own this, but we know, and we've been told by Adams, that they're building the houses there. We are in the midst of unscrewing up what Adams Home did with our HOA. It is so convoluted that we're having to get the state to come in to rewrite our HOA laws. So if they're going to do this to these same people here, and then attempt to turn over an HOA or a management of the property to people when from history, if they do mess it up again, these people are going to be in a world of trouble. And it's difficult enough for us to manage our 3 streetlights and sprinkler system, and imagine them having to do a sump pump system that's going to depend upon whether they flood out the house a lot or not. So I'm not an Adams Home fan. That's the best way to say it. Thank you.
Thank you.
She's the quiet one on the block.
Monica Bruger, I'm 209 Lagoon Mist Court. So I guess this is the first time I'm seeing this, and thank you all for sitting here and taking into account what we want, right? It's super important. So I guess a couple questions, or a couple things, and then a couple questions. It's a lot of houses, and I think it's pretty clear that most of us are disappointed in that, right? That we see that as a negative, that it's just too crowded and it's going to create issues. But as far as this whole process, what is the timing? Like, how long before we know if we actually get to open this back up? Because it's exciting to think that we might get an opportunity to do that, since it seemed like it was a done deal at one point, right? Is it a long ways off? And
They'll be discussing this tonight is a workshop. It's not a
Mhm.
regular scheduled city commission meeting. The next regularly scheduled meeting will be January 13th, and this is on the agenda to discuss opening the approvals back up, and the city attorney will be here at that meeting to talk to the commission about that, and whether it's just the final plan they can open up or go all the way back to, the zoning, that sort of thing, and what the, what could possibly happen if that takes place. Of course, the best case scenario would be the developer and the city come to an agreement on what is acceptable, and we let them build what's acceptable, and everybody's happy. But that not being the case, the city attorney will be providing them with his recommendations on what to do based on what he believes is in the city's best interest, and what we have a right to do.
Okay, because as we talk about what would be acceptable, of course, we're not going to get to that answer other than you've heard our opinions that it's pretty crowded and the flooding is a concern. But I'm just wondering on how do you move forward from that? Because once you guys do here, if we can open it back up, that's a huge discussion to really revamp that and make that look different.
Right. I think we'll have to see what happens at that next meeting in January, and then go from there as to how that discussion would happen. I know from the standpoint of any new subdivisions coming in, we'll have mandatory, before anything even gets to the first design, we'll have mandatory workshops with the community, so they can see what the plans are for any new subdivisions, and they can give their input ahead of time, and we'll have staff here to understand that input. And it is in the city code that the city commission has every right in voting on whether to approve a subdivision. One of the things they must look at is concerns from the city and the residents and the neighbors. So that's going forward. So I'm assuming if we open this back up, that we would do the same thing. We would have the developer here to, with some alternate plans, and hopefully the neighborhood and the developer would kind of work together to come up with something acceptable to then come back through the development review process and ask for approval from the Planning and Zoning Board and the City Commission.
Well, thank you, and I look forward to January 13th.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
The better I get, the more I think back there. I got a question for y'all, and you all think about what I'm going to say. You prove this subdivision, if it starts over again, and I want you to think about this for a minute. Osceola County got in trouble this year. Their impact fees are $36,000. They're going to raise them to $50,000. They can't keep up with the infrastructure. Okay? We can't even keep up with mowing the grass and taking care of what we got to take care of. But think about what I'm going to say to you, and I wasn't kidding when I said that ditch that goes behind your house in the Baptist church, it goes under the road. From that road, it's got to be dug up. All the way across Halifax, all the way down to the big two-story blue house. There's a ditch there, and there's a catch basin there on both sides. Okay? That ditch veers off. We used to call it the Jack Bellamy property, but now nobody knows Jack Bellamy. It goes southeast. You're looking at a couple $100,000 worth of money that's going to have to be put into that ditch system. If you expect them to build this subdivision and you don't expect them to flood, then that ditch and that pipe's got to be dug up, and all that rock that was put in there to put a Band-Aid on it, and even south of Halifax, has got to be taken care of. I'll suggest this to you tonight. We need to talk about impact fees, and we need to bring that infrastructure out in January, number one. And the comprehensive plan. And we need to get into that comprehensive plan. I am totally against 4 houses per acre. I believe your subdivision's nice, they're half-acre lots. I like them. You can drive around your house, you can work on any part of that house. Go to New Smyrna, go to Edgewater, go to Venetian Bay. Try to work on your house, you can't get there. You have to hire a crane to go over top of the house. That's an added expense. So if they build these houses, you all want to rent a crane, you all want to get over on the other side of your house, you're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to spend a couple $100,000 just to get the ditching line to put this subdivision in. Nobody thought about that. Oh, the water will just perforate. How much water do you have in the back of your house?
6 feet.
6 feet?
For 2
I've seen the
weeks.
water in that house.
Well,
Yeah, in the back part of the house, it's been in that house, okay? Nobody wants to talk about these things. Folks, you gotta have an engine, you gotta have wheels before you build a subdivision. We need to bring everything to the front in January and start doing it. Do away with these 4 houses per acre. Go to half-acre lots and look at agricultural and the whole 9 yards and put this city on a journey where we can say, you know, that's a nice subdivision behind Mary Louise Park. Them people got lots of land they can drive around. If you want Section 8 housing, let's put it somewhere else, but not on the middle of US 1. I don't know. Folks, I was on this council when that US 1 used to be commercial. And how it turned into residential, I didn't vote for it. Thank you. That's the question. Who's going to pay for that 200 grand? That's a good question.
Jana Taylor, 183 East Ariel. That was actually some of my comments that I made in my email that I sent a year and a half ago. It was questioning, what's the developer going to do for the city? What are they going to do for the road improvement? What are they going to do for the drainage improvements? Where's the water going to go? And also, since this entrance and it runs along US 1, don't we need to have FDOT approval of some sort?
Yeah, they got FDOT approval for
Okay.
the curb cut, you mean, for the road?
Mm-hmm. Okay. But for the drainage and all that too, I would think someone from there would need to look at it as well because of the runoff.
St.
No.
John's looks at the drainage, but FDOT, they have to get a driveway permit from FDOT, which they have
Okay.
gotten.
Okay. And then how does it fit into the stormwater master plan? That was one of my other comments.
One more time. When we first moved in about a year ago, we were told there were homeless living in that area. And apparently they've left, except now we have more homeless. Those 3 cranes that are living in my backyard now. I wonder where they came from. They came from there. Really nice. We have mother, father, and a baby. The baby was just hatched a couple months ago. But talk to the Fish and Game wildlife folks. They said, don't feed them. It's a $500 fine. They are protected. So we need help in relocating our homeless families now once you tear down all those trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments from the public? Okay, none at this time. Any discussion with the commission?
Doug, do we feel like we got enough information from the citizens to present something to Garden Street?
Based on what I heard, I would say the consensus is they want the whole thing stopped. They don't, my impression anyway, and please correct me if I'm wrong, didn't sound like they really want to negotiate much with the developer. Anybody?
I think you're right.
Okay.
I think you're absolutely right.
No, I think it might say that we would accept a reasonable development.
Right, but not negotiate changing the plans of this specific plan. Okay.
Could we put some lipstick on this pig?
It's still a pig. Still a pig.
And some hammers.
Yes, Mike?
Mike Arman, Magdalene. From what I've heard tonight, it sounds like this really ought to be reopened based as much as anything else on the irregularities in the application process. I've looked at them putting it through, and it sounded like they're making it up as they go along. Now, I do know that it's a pretty complicated process, and I've done some work with St. John's, and let me tell you, they make a visit from the KGB look like a visit from Santa Claus. But, okay, so be it. My own feeling is that reduced density, increased buffers, and when we were working with Joey Posey on City Center, down the south end of town, there was a question involving drainage. And we twisted his arm a little bit. He wanted the HOA to take care of the drainage on that. And we said, no, you know. He said the county was going to do it. And I said, no, you know the county's not going to do it. So we made him agree to have the HOA do it. I'm thinking that this developer ought to take care of that plumbing, the infrastructure, to get the water out of the area that Jeff is talking about. And that would take care of that problem. So I don't think we're out of the woods on this, but it could happen. But they're not going to be real happy because obviously they want as many houses as they can possibly get to maximize their investment. And that's exactly correct. Once they're done, they're gone. And the only people who make money on it then are the banks from the mortgages and the insurance companies. And that's it. And yeah, the city's going to get some tax dollars, but that's not the goal here.
No.
So that needs some work.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Janet, I remember at one of our meetings, city meetings, when we talked about this, I thought they said that there was no buffer on the, between Lagoon Mist and...
It looks minimal, you know,
Yeah.
5-10 feet maybe.
Yeah, it didn't show much at all. When I
Yeah.
pulled up the one
Yeah.
set of prints that she has here. It's like
They-
a direct line. It's like boom, boom.
And that's
And
typically, if it's, you know, residential and residential, especially what you currently call low-density residential, up against low-density residential, then that's why the buffer isn't large. If you had this coming in as a commercial development up against a residential development, you'd have a much larger buffer because it's you know, not a compatible land use. But they look at it, your code looks at it as residential and residential. You don't need much of a buffer because you're both residential. Again, the problem is this is a PUD, so the people sitting up here and your staff have the ability to negotiate any of those buffers. It's not set in stone. So you could require more. In this case, they didn't.
Is there a fence in between the two or anything?
I don't remember
I don't
seeing any.
remember. I think both the lots along here could put up a fence and the lots in Lagoon Mist could put up a fence, but.
Right, natural homeowners.
There is, I think, a fence in that 10-foot buffer along Gaines, but that buffer is so cramped because I'm guessing they're putting in a sidewalk, and you know that doesn't leave a lot of place for growies in a 10-foot.
A sidewalk on Gaines?
Well,
I
that would
wasn't aware of
normally,
that.
that would normally be required when they're, you know, all their internal street system will have sidewalks all along that road.
I don't think this plan has a sidewalk on Gaines Street.
I don't believe it ever did.
I don't think it ever did
I
either.
don't think so either.
Well, that 20-foot easement is also a pedestrian access, so I guess they'll get out to Gaines and then just not have a sidewalk.
Right.
It's interesting that you call it a buffer zone. It's like the good against the bad.
Some people that were, I had spoken to the owner of Miranda Homes about this project, and he told me one time that a 10-foot buffer does not have enough biomass to sustain the plants that are there. It will die, is what he told me, being just that wide. So I don't know if that's true or not, but.
I've seen plenty of 10-foot buffers on Miranda Homes, if that's what you're talking about, Miranda Homes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do the same thing. It's what they can get away with.
Right.
And we don't have to let them get away with it, but, you know, they put it on their plans and nobody said anything different, then.
Right. And Kristen, I noticed that you were not in favor of a wall at all, right?
No, I think a wall is fine, but a wall isn't enough. I think the density, I've always said that when our comprehensive plan called for 4 houses per acre, they're at 6 houses per acre. I was just saying it's not enough of a solution. And I think on the plans that you sent out to the group with the workshop, it shows a 5-foot buffer on the south side and then a 6-foot PVC fence on east, south, and north. So, but no, I think a fence at least, but definitely the lot sizes are too small.
So are you thinking that if they were willing to go with the 100-foot wide lots on Gaines and left everything else to the east of that the way that it is now, that would not be acceptable?
No, I've always 100-foot wide on Gaines, but they should do something on the south too because it borders Lagoon Mist.
Right.
But yes, no, I think they should increase the size of those lots.
All of them in here?
Mm-hmm.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry I wasn't clear.
No, you were. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
it got on the record.
Yeah, yeah.
So now it's more complicated than it was, Jan.
It could get real complicated if both sides, so to speak, draw their line in the sand. It could get real complicated, but, you know, the city will hear from the attorney about what he feels you have the right to do as far as going back. And then it becomes a decision of the 5 people up here as to, do you take his recommendation? Do you go further than that? You know, what do you all do in response to that? And it's not an easy decision. And that's why I was, you know, I always hope, the eternal optimist, that, you know, both sides can sit down and haggle out something that works, so we don't have to spend years in lawsuits and that sort of thing. So, you know, we'll see what they think about that.
I do know for sure that before I was a commissioner and we had our Gaines Street gang, for lack of a better word, that nobody in that group was opposed to development. Nobody said that they didn't want anything to happen on this lot. So we got that going for us at least.
And I don't think you have the right to say nothing can happen on the
Right.
lot.
But
I
they
think-
weren't
Yeah, I think.
that adamant
Yeah.
about stop, you know,
Right.
that wasn't the goal. It was to
Right.
get something that was compatible with the
Right.
existing community.
Right.
And now the existing community is bigger because back then Lagoon Mist was just a bunch of empty lots. So there's more moving parts now than there was then.
But that was a successful subdivision, and so if it's the same builder, then you have the experience right there, you know, that those lots will sell.
Right.
So that would be my case for, you know, if it's the same builder, why not do another Lagoon Mist?
And I don't think anybody in here is unhappy with Lagoon Mist, right?
No. That was our original thing. We wanted to reflect the neighborhood.
Right.
Yes.
That's what we fought for.
But we found out that Adams is just like everybody else. Give me the money.
Oh, yeah. That's not a lie.
Human instinct.
But you gotta also remember, they are in business, just like many people are in business, to make money, and it's our responsibility to make sure they're doing what's right for our city. It's not their responsibility, it's our responsibility. So we can't put that on them.
Okay, so here's another question. So the way this is now, the houses, they don't have any, there's no grass, right? It's just houses right up against houses. So that's why they have to have this big green space.
They will
So-
have a
They'll have
lot
grass.
that's, 50 foot by 100 and something. And the product, the house that goes on that will be, it has to be 1,200 square feet or more. Could be a 2-story house. And they'll have a little backyard. They'll have a front yard setback,
20 feet.
they have to go, I think it's 20 feet before they can build their house so that the driveway fits
Right,
two
okay.
cars. But they will be tight.
Well, I
And there'll
guess-
be 5 feet side yards. So there'll be 10 feet in between the houses.
So I guess what, the leading question is if the houses are on the bigger lots, if it's 2 houses per acre, let's say, that's a lot more grass. Do they need less open space?
Yeah, they can get
So
some
they
of
could
that open
still end up with
space.
more with not as many houses, but it's,
No, they won't.
because they can cut down the open space because the houses have grass around them and.
Right, there's two types of open space, not to get too specific, but there's open space that can be counted on the lot itself, but then there's open space requirement that has to be common to all users, so that would be that 7 acres in the middle. So they could reduce that, but they would still have to have common open space in their development.
Thanks.
Do you recall what the open space requirements are for R1? Me neither.
I don't
It's not as high as the RPUD though, right, Janet?
35%?
35% for R1?
I think so.
Because I know our open space in Oak Hill was pretty high. I think it was 60% total, and that got divvied up between common and just open space, for lack of
Are
a
you
better
talking
word.
about these?
Yes.
The PUD? In this case, I think it's 60% open space requirement, and 30 or 35% of that has to be the common open
Right,
space.
right. Do you think if they had a larger lot sizes that they could reduce, that they would meet the open space requirements without having the big 7 acres in the middle? So they could use that to build? If they say like went to half acre or quarter acre or whatever, some other size, that there would be enough of that part of their, each
I mean, they will
individual-
lose lots, let's put it that way. But again, that isn't necessarily something that would concern the city. They'll lose lots, they'll still have to comply if they go with the PUD of the 60 and the 35. No, they won't be required for 7 acres because the lots will be larger, but a PUD is all about, the reason it's unconventional from your normal R1 zoning is because it allows clustering of lots to create more open space. And done in a good design, as a planner, I would suggest to you that PUD is the best zoning that the city could ever want in their code, because it's the only one that allows for negotiation on what goes into that neighborhood. They could come in here with straight zoning and do, quarter acre lots, and you have very little to say about it. On a PUD, you have a lot more say in the design. I think the problem here we're all finding out is the city didn't require enough for a good design.
Right. I remember when they first submitted it, they were all 50. And then I think it was you that went at one of the meetings and said that it's lacking the diversity. that's required, and they said, okay, well, we'll just make some of the lots 40 foot. And they
Right,
were like,
right.
there's our diversity.
Right.
Great.
The wrong way.
Yeah, wrong way, exactly.
You talk about the foliage that would be needed if you did additional housing. Look at our development. When we moved in, they put in sticks as new trees to grow because they had wiped everything out. And most of those didn't grow. We had to replant other trees. So the developer, in theory, if it is Adams Homes, they wipe out the trees, they reschedule maybe 2 or 3 streets in there with a 1/4 to a 1/2 acre. You know, and they're gonna defoliate anyway. So, you know, you need to become a city of trees completely.
And on clearing, a lot of these really small lot subdivisions, they come out and clear cut the whole development before they get started. In this case, they wouldn't clear cut that center area, but they would come in and clear cut everything else. The city does not have to allow that. You can mark tree save areas as long as they wouldn't fall where a building pad would go or a driveway would go. And it gets a little more difficult on a 40-foot lot, but you can have them literally draw in the house pad on the plans and the driveway on the plans, and then you can see with your tree overlay, is there a tree in the backyard that can be saved? Now, they're going to say, that's too expensive, I have to work around that and, you know, protect that, and my machinery, I have a lot more trouble. Again, that's a policy decision of the city, whether you want to make them save existing trees that would fall on those lots.
Sorry to keep you guys here longer. I have a question on the open space. I think it's 33 acres in total, and 7 acres is only 21%.
Yeah, I keep saying 7, I don't know though.
I think it is 7 acres.
That
'Cause
they're
it's-
counting, if you look at their open space exhibit, which is one of the reasons we're reopening it, because they gave us basically a shot of this development, and they colored everything in yellow that was going to be their total open space, and then in blue for their common open space. What they didn't do was tie that to specific numbers. So to me, that means they did not provide what is required.
Right.
You know, when they, at the bottom of that pretty picture, they totaled it up, what's required, and, you know, lo and behold, said they're showing exactly what is required. But we haven't seen that yet. And they were taking, literally, they were taking the tops of each of those perimeter ponds as open space, because they were claiming that that's not the pond, that's the berm around the pond or something ridiculous. So that's one of the things we'll be using to, as something that we can reopen.
Okay, thanks.
Look at the pond and see where it overfills to, that's still not open space.
Motion to adjourn.
Any other discussion? Any other comments from the public? All right. None at this time. Any more comments from the commission?
No.
All right. Everybody feel good with where we're at? Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All right. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for coming.